Aloha and good evening, everyone, and welcome to one of our live stream virtual conversations as part of our 42nd annual Hawaii International Film Festival presented by Halekulani. My name is Anna Page. I'm the Director of Programming at the festival, and I'm honored to present this talk today with David Siev, Director of Bad Acts, as part of our Film for Thought program at HIF in partnership with the Hawaii Council for the Humanities. I also have the most exciting breaking news, and that is that Bad Acts has won our official Kau Kahoku Award as of last night. So big congratulations to David Siev and the team for winning that award. I am going to give a quick introduction to David and our scholar moderator for this evening, Kim Kompok. And then I'm going to turn the mic over to Danielle Seed from the University of Hawaii, who is going to say a few words about the Film for Thought program. So, as we know, David is the director of Bad Acts, but a little bit of backstory on David. He holds producing, camera, and consulting credits on everything from hidden camera blockbuster comedies like Bad Trip to rock and roll biopics such as The Dirt. David first made waves in the Asian American Festival circuit with the debut of his award-winning film short, Year Zero. He currently lives in New York, where he's now focused on writing and directing his own projects, and Bad Acts is his feature-length debut. The conversation will be moderated today by University of Hawaii Professor Kim Kompok. Kim is an assistant professor of history at the University of Hawaii, West Oahu, and she's also affiliated with the Honolulu-based organizations Women's Voices, Women Speak, and the International Women's Network Against Militarism. Welcome, David and Kim.
Thank you so much, Anna. It's an honor to be able to have this conversation with all of you this evening, and certainly an honor to have won the Kakuhoku Award, last night. That really meant a lot to not only me but my entire family. So I hope I get the opportunity to attend Hawaii International Film Festival in the future, maybe with another movie. So
definitely. And now Danielle is going to give a quick introduction to the Hawaii Council for the Humanities Film for Thought program, and then we'll turn the conversation over.
Thanks so much, Anna. Mahalo to everyone joining us tonight for the second of the Film for Thought series discussions. My name is Danielle Seed, and I'm an assistant professor of English at the University of Hawaii at Manoa, where I teach courses in film, television, and media. And this year, I am working with the Hawaii Council for the Humanities to help direct and organize the Film for Thought series. The Hawaii Council for the Humanities has been part of the humanities communities here in Hawaii for the last 50 years. Our kuleana is to support the bountiful connections that have long existed in Hawaii and to foster the possibility of new connections between all kinds of peoples, cultures, and perspectives. This is the 12th year of our Film for Thought series, a collaborative program between HIF and the Hawaii Council for the Humanities that is designed to inspire thought-provoking discourse and community conversations through the medium of film. This year's theme for the Film for Thought series is activism, past and present. Recently, activism has come into mainstream consciousness through social movements like Black Lives Matter, as well as well-publicized events like the Women's March and the Trans Liberation March, movements that were galvanized by Trump's presidency and which formed the backdrop for Bad Acts. I can't think of anyone better poised to speak about activist possibilities in the face of white supremacy, patriarchy, and US empire than Kim Kompok, who, like all of the scholars in this year's series, is a true scholar activist. So without further ado, I will turn it over now to Kim.
Thank you so much, Danielle, for that very warm introduction. And such a pleasure to meet you, David. Oh my goodness. Congratulations on not just this award, but it's as long as my arm, the number of awards you've gotten. And also 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Is that the best award of all? I don't know.
It's all very surreal right now. I mean, when I set out to make this film, I didn't even realize I was making a documentary to begin with. And then once I came to that realization, and now that the film is coming out and in theaters on Friday, and has won all these awards. I mean, it's all so unexpected, and it feels like I'm living this crazy dream right now. So I'm just soaking it all in. It's just really special just to see how people are resonating with my family's story.
Wow. Yes, thank you. I just want to say thank you also to audience members. Tonight we had a little boo-boo with the timing because of the daylight saving situation. And so David is actually joining us from New York right now. It's like 11 o'clock or something. So we really appreciate you taking time for this, Dave. Really, really do.
No, thank you.
So I just want to say I really identified with this film. There was so much. It was so electrifying. I also actually I went to high school in Huntsville, Alabama, and I ended up in California right after college. I went to college in Georgia, so I know about being from a state that people consider very racist. People hear Alabama and they're like racism. I don't know that Michigan has that kind of impact on people. Do you feel like I feel like the film is waking people up to how much white supremacy is in the United States, not just in the South, but in many places right along the Canadian border. Do you want to speak to that reality and the film as a wake-up call?
No, absolutely. I mean, look, I think the reality of it is that there are so many communities like Bad Axe, Michigan, like anywhere in the US, we have our problems with racism. And, with my film, and my family's story, you're seeing that play out through such a specific lens of this Mexican, Cambodian, American family and their restaurant just trying to keep the American dream alive in the face of when it's being challenged, now more than ever, with the pandemic and, with the politically divided nation, and then, with social injustice, with racism. So, it's like, it's not one of those things that is new, but I feel like with 2020 and everything going on in our country, it just kind of put a microscope onto all these issues that our country and our family were going through. So I don't think it's just so specific to Bad Axe as it's so specific to, I think, many other places in our country, and like it's a bigger issue within the nation itself, not just these communities like Bad Axe, Michigan. You're just seeing it through a lens that many people probably don't think too much about when we talk about racism.
Yeah, and I mean, we could say also that the rise of white supremacy is actually a global problem. It's not just confined to the United States. But yeah, I love Malcolm X's quote when he said, "The only South I know is what's south of the Canadian border," and I know that there's actually some Black Canadians who might contradict Malcolm on that.
Sure.
So I want to talk about the title. Were you always going to give it that title? Because there's that whole part in the film where you do the fundraiser and there's backlash about is this a smear kind of campaign for a smear kind of film for our town? Can you talk about the decision to name it Bad Axe?
Yeah, I mean the decision to name it Bad Axe, that I don't think that always was the intention. I think Bad Axe was like this temp title, but then once we put the trailer out there and we started getting all this backlash, it was almost that people were discounting what our experience in Bad Axe is, and therefore discounting our experience as Americans. And it was in the editing process when the goals of what I wanted this film to be started to come out in itself. And one of those was opening up this idea of what the American experience even is. Because when, people think about the American experience, some people might not think that includes that of the Siev family, my family. But the reality is that, America is a country that's built on refugees, it's built on immigrants, it's built on families like my own. And so therefore, what we're experiencing in Bad Axe, Michigan needs to be part of this conversation of what the American experience is. And the decision to naming it Bad Axe, it was very personal to me because, you know what, like me as a Mexican Cambodian filmmaker, living in Bad Axe, Michigan, and share my family's story, I have every right to make a movie and name it Bad Axe as anyone else in the community does. And some people that leaving comments saying like, "How dare he make a film about Bad Axe and call it Bad Axe?" Well, the reality is that look, my Bad Axe and my experience in Bad Axe and my family's, it's not going to be the same as most people's because Bad Axe is a community. It is 97% white. Uh, I can say for sure that the Siev family is probably the only Cambodian Mexican family in like a 100-mile radius. But our experiences of growing up there, of my parents raising a family there, of having a restaurant there, right? Those are all part of our experiences of living in Bad Axe. So yes, like we do have a right, and I did want to empower, myself and my family that our experiences in Bad Axe, it is a Bad Axe experience. It is an American experience.
And the decision to have, that picture of your sister, Jacqueline, facing off with the neo-Nazis, with those semi-automatic guns, with the skull masks on. I mean, that photograph is terrifying. It is, on the one hand, it's a love letter to Bad Axe, and we're left at the end with hope, and there's this love of this place, and a faith and optimism that people can change. And it's also true that with that photograph, we really get the image that, neo-Nazis are on the rise, and even in small places like Bad Axe, they're very empowered. They're very empowered to flex their their political power, to have the neo-Nazi salute.
Sure.
All of that. Can you talk about the decision to use that photograph to capture what the film is about?
I think that photograph says so much. How they say, a picture is worth 1,000 words. Like that picture is no exception. Seeing this, 100-pound Asian American woman standing off against a trio of white supremacists, of neo-Nazis, right? For me, why that picture was so important to use is it shows, I think, the resilience of people like my family is going through exactly what so many other families are going through in towns like Bad Axe, Michigan, where white supremacy is on the rise, where neo-Nazis are on the rise. It is a terrifying image, but I think it was a really powerful and important one to use to grab the attention right away. I mean, what is this 100-pound woman doing facing off against neo-Nazis? And I think the image itself raises a lot of questions, and can also, with questions comes conversations.
Yeah. Thank you. Yes, I reminded Danielle, opened with this, the Film for Thought series theme is activism. Do you see your work as a form of activism? Are you comfortable with, the notion of you as an activist filmmaker?
I mean, yes, I am, and I take great pride in that because, I, even before getting into filmmaking, I like my sisters and I mean, we always wanted to stick up and have a voice and speak about the right things, and being able to do that with this film, I'm really grateful that it's starting real dialogue and starting real conversation. That's what activism is at the end of the day, right? Is being able to talk about these important issues but as a filmmaker, it's talking about those issues in a way that, uh, at least through the lens of telling bad acts, humanizes them. Um, and that was important in the making of this film. Was I didn't want it to feel like we were, preaching to people, preaching to what we might call the other side, right? Because then I would have lost half an audience, and then what conversations would that spark? But by showing, I think all of us in the movie as the imperfect humans that we are, but this is what our beliefs are, and this is what our experience is. Being able to see firsthand the conversations that have evolved from that, especially even after showing it in Bad Axe, Michigan. I take really great pride in that, and that it is starting real dialogue and starting a real conversation. And like I said, that's how change happens. That's the first step.
Wow, tell us about what it was like at the debut in Bad Axe.
It was scary. I mean, it was scary in the sense where we were just really anxious because we had this screening back in May of this past year, after our South by Southwest premiere. We wanted to do a special screening for a lot of the community members who donated to our crowdfunding campaign. So we put together this screening and had a number of open seats. And the people who ended up filling those open seats, requesting tickets, were a lot of the same skeptical individuals that were leaving, the social media comments, stopping my mom in Walmart, telling her they weren't going to support the restaurant anymore, because of what I was doing. And it was kind of nerve-wracking knowing that these, same people from our community wanted to attend this screening. But I'll say after the credits rolled and the lights came up, and there was just a moment of silence. The film was just met with so much love from everyone in that room, and so many of those individuals came up to either me or Jacqueline or my mom or someone in our family, and they said, "I'm sorry." They said, "I'm sorry for judging your family and your story before I had the chance to see it myself." Because, prior to that, some of the social media comments were like, "Oh, like what you were saying, like, this is a hit piece on Bad Axe, and it's just trying to make our community look bad." And, some people even said, like, this isn't real, like they're making this stuff up. But when they had a chance to watch the film for themselves, and, uh, empathy being, one of the most valuable currency of filmmaking, and them being able to connect with us on a human level, it allowed for us to have real conversations within our community with those people, as far as what our family had to go through, not only the past 2 years, but also the past 20 years of trying to get a business going up there, trying to be together as a family. It was just really powerful to see real conversation take place. And that, as a filmmaker, that's something we always dream of, but being able to witness that firsthand will always stick in my heart and my mind, because it was being able to witness the true power of cinema that evening.
Wow, that's really amazing. Let's talk about Jacqueline a little bit. I think one of my she's there in the photo.
She's there too as well. She's she's sitting on the couch over there. But
very good. Hey, Jacqueline. Hello.
Hawaii says hello.
One of my favorite parts in the film is when she makes that distinction between the decisions that your parents made to survive, to assimilate, to try to be the good American, and her decisions to absolutely, you have to speak out in times of crisis, in times when political lines are being drawn. You have to stand up and do what's right. And of course, she's talking about not just standing up against anti-Asian violence, but standing up for the movement for Black lives. And so, as you can tell, I'm wearing my Asians for Black Lives t-shirt. But I was at University of Illinois before I came to University of Hawaii. And so, I kind of learned a little bit more about kind of Midwestern Asian America and, the politics, the indigenous politics there, Black politics there. Can you talk a little bit about, and you're a multiracial family, this is a very multiracial film. Can you talk about the importance of multiracial solidarity, cross-racial solidarity?
Yeah, I mean, you see that our family come together, and even the extension of our family, boyfriends, friends, everyone coming together to stick up for to stand in support of the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's so special to witness that, because we're all coming in with our own experiences or lack of, just trying to gain a better understanding. And that intersectionality, I feel like, is just so important when talking about racism, especially in small towns like Bad Axe, Michigan. And that's why it was important to um, understand, how is Austin feeling about this, how is Raquel feeling about this, how is Jacqueline, right? Because at the end of the day, we were all showing up, in support of that protest, for our own personal reasons, but ultimately aiming for the same goal. And I think, like I said, the intersectionality of different races and people coming together, it's important to get the conversation going, to get that community dialogue going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think sometimes students get like the wrong impression. We have like Asian American studies, and we have African American studies, or we'll have like different kinds of organization of knowledge, and it kind of seems like a sports team situation to them. The Asians fighting for the Asians, and Black people fighting for Black people, but it's really about fighting racism. It's about fighting white supremacy.
The solidarity,
the solidarity, yeah, absolutely. I love how in this conversation you keep reminding us that you're actually Mexican and Cambodian. Because
I am just as much Mexican as I am Cambodian.
Yes, and actually the restaurant, Rachel's, you serve both sushi and tacos, yeah? But you guys are Japanese, so my guess is the tacos are better than the sushi. I don't know. Is that a good assumption?
No, it's all pretty good. I mean, the sushi we have there, people in our community love it. Many people's first time having sushi was at our restaurant. But also, we have a great Taco Tuesday. So I don't know. Obviously I'm biased, but I think all the food is amazing. So
awesome. Because I think this film has been kind of marketed as about an Asian American family. Yeah. Mm-hmm. When really, like you're saying, it's a multiracial family. It's just that I think that maybe you're more targets of anti-Asian violence.
Sure.
And during the the rise of COVID under Trump and everything. But as a Mexican American, I mean, you guys are also dealing with, or we're all dealing with it, but the horror of what happened in El Paso. It wasn't just about anti-Asian violence and anti-Black violence during this time, but the mass shooting that happened in 2019 in El Paso, and then Uvalde as well. Sure. Do you want to speak a little bit to that part of the story that maybe hasn't been discussed as much? I think the Asians for Black Lives piece is kind of being covered quite a bit, but like your mother's story, Chicano identity, I'm not sure how she identifies, but the rise of anti-Mexican violence in the United States as well.
I mean, for me, I am, like I said, half Mexican, just as much Mexican as I am Cambodian. But I never, and one of my biggest regrets growing up is not being able to get my grandparents on my mom's side, their story on cameras. And, that's a result of being younger when they passed away. And, as a kid, you're not thinking beyond where grandma and grandpa gonna take me, out to lunch, or where are they gonna, or what toy are they gonna buy me at the dollar store, right? You're not thinking about the important stuff, which is what are their stories. And if I could go back in time, I wish I could connect with them and learn more about my Mexican background, my Mexican heritage. And with my mom, she never learned Spanish. My grandparents didn't want to pass that down to her because they wanted her to assimilate. And with that comes a whole loss of a generation of stories that doesn't get told. So, it's in that sense, it's not having those stories makes it more of a challenge to connect with that Mexican side of me. But again, I hoping that's something I can do in the future, in future projects, and just trying to rediscover this other half of me. And as far as speaking of about the anti Mexican hate in our country, I mean that's the thing about Bad Acts, right? Is even though it may seem specific to anti AAPI hate, I feel like our experience is so speaks to the experiences of just multicultural families in general living in communities like Bad Axe, Michigan.
Yeah, and there's that in that confrontation with the neo-Nazis. One of the men with guns, one of the neo-Nazi guys, mispronounces the word "gook."
Yeah,
I mean, it's not funny, but also funny. Like the kind of
right,
bizarre, like whatever racist word I can use for you, I'm just going to grab for that.
Exactly.
That happens a lot with mixed heritage people.
Yeah.
You're like, but it's all the same terror coming at you. Not a laughing matter at all. Which maybe is a good transition to that scene with your mom. Where she's on the phone, and the phone calls are coming in about you're calling Jacqueline that Asian bitch, and you're digging your own graves, and you can really feel. I mean, at different points in the documentary, it feels like a thriller, but it's like real life,
sure.
and like you're afraid, you're afraid for the family. Is everything gonna be okay? And you can see like you're kind of coaching your mom to do one thing, and Jacqueline's coaching her to do another thing, and she's just trying to be as cordial as possible to those customers who are just spewing such vile racist stuff at her. And then she says to you, "You don't understand, David. You don't live here. You don't have a clue." Can you speak a little bit to that moment, what it was like to film that scene, and what was going through your mind in that moment?
Well, that scene, my mom really does put me in my place. And, in the sense where, yes, I know what the experience is like, but what the experience I don't know what it's like is the hangover after all of this happens. Because, at the end of the day, I get to come back to New York, and they're the ones who have to put up with the consequences of this film being out there. So, it became important to include that in the film, because there is a self-interrogation that happens throughout the process of watching this film and the process of making it, where I had to ask myself the questions of, why am I even making this film in the first place? The answer to that is I try to defend it by saying it's a love letter to Bad Axe, which, sure, it is a love letter to Bad Axe, but ultimately it's a love letter to my family at the end of the day, and what we've been through in Bad Axe, and just having great love and appreciation for the resilience they all have. So that's why those moments of self-interrogation become so important to include, because again, I wanted to make sure, like, look, if I'm painting my family as the imperfect people who I love unconditionally, I also have to be able to turn the camera on myself and do the exact same thing. Because again, that's how we humanize these issues, is not by making us look like saints, but by allowing audiences to connect with us as real people, people that they can see themselves in. And I think that's why the film, as I mentioned, witnessing firsthand, has been able to spark, a real conversation, is because people look, they're no longer looking at us as being the other side, right? They I think are being able to look at us as their fellow community members, or fellow human, their fellow Americans.
Wow. Yeah, I'm thinking now about your dad, and that just, it's such an emotional journey, learning about his experience as a Cambodian refugee, all that he's been through, his training the family and how to use a gun, those scenes with Raquel when she's being followed by neo-Nazis, and him, just so calm, just so calm, knowing that they might have to defend themselves that way. and then his like ability to cry. I mean, I think one of the stereotypes we deal with of Asian American dads is that they, they don't cuddle their kids, or they don't, cry, and you're able
Sure.
to
Yeah.
you capture that on film. Do you want to say a little bit about, because your dad is a real star player in this film? Yeah. Do you want to?
No, absolutely. I mean, my dad's vulnerability is something that you see unveil itself in real time. I mean, growing up, my dad has always shared stories of growing up in Cambodia, and I'm so grateful. I feel like that's where I get so much of my instinct of being a storyteller, is through hearing him, tell these stories all these years. But what is new to him is uh, talking about how these stories have impacted who he is as a person, who he is as a father, how he approaches, everyday life. And, that was like something that the camera was really able to bring out in him, was this sense of vulnerability that didn't quite exist before the pandemic. Because you're right, in Asian culture, especially for the older generation, it can be harder for, individuals like my dad to show their real emotions and, what they're feeling. And I think that's why it's hard for so many Cambodian refugees who have made it to this country to talk about their past and to talk about their trauma. They think it's better to not talk about it. But what my dad has said, what he's learned through this, is that being able to talk about it and seeing how people have related to his story, audience members, it's been really healing for him. And I think encourage him to talk even more about it. So yeah, I'm really, really grateful, obviously, that he's always shared his stories with us, but I'm even more grateful now that he is finding healing in those stories by talking about how, it's affected his trauma and who he is as a person.
I wanted to talk too about your dad. That scene where he's putting the flags up toward the end. He's putting the flags into the ground, and I was reminded of Nicole Hannah-Jones, the journalist who put together the 1619 Project, and she had, I don't know if you were able to watch that, but she has this really moving part where she talks about the journey she's been on with her dad's relationship to America and his patriotism and his insistence on having a flag waving outside the house, even though he's experienced horrific racism in this country as an African American. And she goes on a journey where she's not just angry at her dad anymore about that. But I wanted to know how you read that scene, what the American flag in your dad's relationship to that kind of patriotism. Do you have any comments about that?
Yeah, I mean, at the end, it's sort of my dad coming to this arc of him, where you're seeing that this man just really loves and embraces America for all that it is. And it's because of, the scene previous to that informs where he came from. I mean, a Cambodian refugee who, against all odds, makes it to this country with his widowed mother and 5 other siblings, and being able to look at the life that he has now and how grateful he is to be able to, have a successful family, a successful restaurant. And and for me, it's about showing, again, when people think of my dad, they might not think of him as, what many people think a patriot is, right? Like, but him pulling that flag up and doing it with such love and honor and respect. I mean, he is just as patriotic as anyone else. He's just as American as anyone else. And to me, I'm hoping that's what that scene signified.
So I wanted to recognize also, you were here in Hawaii, I think for your wedding. You weren't able to come for the film screening, but you may or may not know, but people in Hawaii don't necessarily identify as American. Yeah, there is an indigenous struggle here to protect the land, to protect the water, and many people who have a very strong reaction to the American flag and are not, really fighting for an independent Hawaii. And so that language, actually, of hard question time, that language of country, a nation of immigrants, for indigenous people, and for actually, descendants of enslaved Africans, is actually offensive. That there's other ways, and it was interesting hearing your kind of montage there. As your fellow human beings, as your fellow, I think you said bad acts people, fellow people in the community, fellow Americans. And thinking about those choices. The ways that we connect as human beings isn't necessarily mediated through, an identification with, America as a nation of immigrants.
I'm sorry. And what was the question? I'm so
I mean,
sorry.
do you have any reaction to that kind of critique that when Asian Americans identify as patriotic Americans, as like wanting to kind of be a part of that, national narrative, it is a part of an erasure of Indigenous and Black struggle. That there's other kinds of ways that we can identify that are not bound up with the flag and not bound up with a certain kind of a kind of patriotism that kind of lets America off the hook for for its crimes against Indigenous people.
Right. Look, I mean, to be honest, I think absolutely. I think for me, I can't speak on that because I can only speak about my own experiences. So I don't want to comment on someone else's experiences and give my opinion on that because I can only speak on behalf of what my family has gone through and what our experience is.
Just giving you a heads up, Dave. If you come over here and say we're all Americans, you might get the slap down.
No, and I appreciate that.
Yeah. Oh, we've got comments here in the chat. What were the hardest parts to film? How has the aftermath been for your family after the film came out?
Oh, the hardest parts to film. I would say it's those more, the more emotional moments, especially between Jacqueline and my dad, because then you have to, during those moments, I had to, sort of ride this line between being filmmaker and also being the family member, being the brother, being the son. Because when those moments happen, usually I like my mom, the mediator, and will try to de-escalate the situations. But it was also recognizing when these moments were happening that they were so important to, again, showing, my family as a well-rounded and perfect individuals that they are. So those were hard to film. But and the second part of the question, how's the aftermath been? Like I mentioned, after we had the chance to do that Bad Act screening, it has been very positive in ways that even I didn't even expect. I mean, the fact that people were in our community were willing to take a step forward and have a conversation and a dialogue about the themes and the issues in the film really meant a lot to me. And since that evening, not only support behind the film has grown, but the restaurant as well.
Wow, amazing. Well, on the other side, are there? Can you talk about maybe the most fun or joyful parts of the film?
I mean, that moment where my dad is like by the fire and he says, the fuck I am. I mean, it was finding, those joyous little moments that we had that, because as dark as that year was and as much struggle we had to go through, like many families, I think there was joy we had to try and find in the everyday life, right? So, you know, it was a lot of those moments, you know, you see like me, Austin, and Mike like drinking beers around a fire in the snow, and you see us like arguing over board games, right? I mean, those were all like the fun moments of film, and I really, it does bring me back to those happy moments during the pandemic, and I'm glad I was able to capture those and include those in the film.
Wow, we're at the last 5 minutes. Oh, here we go. Grace Alvaro Calicton says, can you share, David, some of the bridge building and work that still remains now that the film is out?
I mean, the bridge building, and I'm sorry if I am sound like a broken record, but it's conversations, it's dialogues, it's being able to you know, for us open up this conversation about what the American experience is, and you know, making sure that the experiences of my family is included in that. So, you know, we're fortunate enough to be able to do an impact campaign next year, and our goal is to bring this to other communities like Bad Axe, Michigan, rural communities in the Midwest around the country, so we can hopefully start more of these personal dialogues and more of these conversations.
Awesome. You know, as I said, I'm an educator. I'm curious, are there ways that the film has been, I don't know, misread or misunderstood? Are there any tips you have for educators to make sure we get your message right on this film?
Ooh, that's a good question. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything that's been misread. It's usually like funny, like little things that just show that there's a disconnect with just like cultural differences. I mean, for instance, like there's like one person who left a review who they said they generally liked the film, but uh, their comments on it was that they just didn't understand who Ma and Grandma was. You know, they didn't understand the fact that we called our grandma Ma in the film, and therefore there's a misunderstanding between mom, who my mom is, and then Ma, who my grandma is. So it's hopefully people just being able to pay attention to details and understand that there are cultural differences between my family and, you know, maybe theirs, and you know, when watching a film like this, attention to detail is important. Everything is included in there for a reason, and you know, I just hope people will pay full attention to it. So
Awesome. We're at the very end. Are there any other questions from the audience? Any others? Any last comments you might have for us, David? Any question you wish the interviewers would ask more?
No, you asked some really great questions. Just really grateful to have been included in this conversation, to have had Bad Axe be able to share with the great state of Hawaii. I wish I could have been there, you know, the past week to attend the screening and be there in person, but I'm just so grateful that it really resonated with the programmers, the staff, the audience members, and the jury over there. So, no, thank you so much for including me in the conversation this evening.
Yeah, absolutely. And here, let me do my imaginary lay to you.
Oh, thank you.
And yeah, just best of luck with the film. Sky's the limit. I imagine that you're going to keep on getting more and more awards. Remind us, you're at which film festival there in New York?
I'm at Doc NYC this evening. Yep. So,
did you get any awards there?
Well, we didn't get. I don't know if there's an award ceremony, but we did win a Critics' Choice award last night, which was very exciting. So
wow, gonna run out of wall space pretty soon. Thanks again, David. It was a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
Well,
bye.
Both of you David and Kim, thank you so much for the conversation this evening. A big mahalo to everybody for joining us and for watching tonight. And another big mahalo to Hawaii Council for the Humanities, our partner for the Film for Thought program at HIF. And before we go, I do want to let everyone know that we do have Bad Acts available now on our virtual streaming platform until November 27th. You can watch anytime, on demand, at home. So check it out if you've not already watched it. Definitely a must-see, an award winner here at HIF. Also, we will be back with more Film for Thought conversations this week, and you can find the full details on our website at hif.org. Tomorrow, we'll be in conversation with Cynthia Lowen, Director of Battleground. So thank you all again. Mahalo and good night.